Hey everybody, it is with thanks to Triumph UK themselves that I've had this Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE on loan for about 8 days. I've actually got a couple of days left with it before I do the review, and as you may know if you watch my channel regularly, the way I review bikes is I do a first ride, I do a few intermediate videos looking at different aspects of the bike, and then I sort of culminate it at the end in a full review. In this video, I want to do a closer look. I just want to have a look at the Scrambler 1200 XE, look at what you get on the bike for the cost. It's about £13,000 bike, and also have a little look at the modes, because there isn't a huge amount to that, and by covering all this means that I can refer back to it in my review if people want a more in-depth explanation. Before we go for a physical closer look at each individual component, I'm just going to go over a few specs about the bike itself as an overall. Yes, I am using a cheat sheet here because I can't remember all this stuff. I'm doing alright on it, but sometimes I make mistakes and I have to go back and change it, and it's easier to just do it this way. Okay, so the engine itself is liquid cooled, as you can see, with the radiator which is on the front, 8 valve, 270 degree crank angle parallel twin. It produces 89 brake horsepower at 7,250 RPM. That's interesting because it feels like it's got most of its grunt down the bottom end, and it has got a lot of grunt. 110 Newton meters at 4,500 RPM. So yeah, it's got an awful lot of torque down there, but it does have power further up. Of course, as I've mentioned, it has got the wet plate assisted clutch, which basically means that it is both easy to pull on and use, but also it will slip a little bit when you dump down the box, so you don't get rear wheel chatter and lock up and stuff like that. You can't change that aspect of it because that's built into the bike, whereas with the traction control and all that sort of stuff, because this is the XE model, which is specifically designed to be used off-road, you can turn the traction control and stuff off like that, but we'll get into that in a minute. The frame is made from tubular steel, the bike weighs about 230 kilos, the seat height on this is 840 millimeters. I am 6'4", and for me, this bike is just grand. For Reno, this bike is huge, it's like an elephant. Fuel tank is 16 litres, and I've been getting about 50 miles to the gallon on this on average. I found that you do feel yourself needing to like half fill up the tank, because you used half a tank of fuel yesterday and you're like, that wasn't that long a ride. If I go on that again, I'm going to run out. I'll top it up. So I found myself topping up every time I go for a long ride. Fuel consumption on Triumph's website is 4.6 litres to 100 kilometres. This is a 21/17 setup, obviously 17-inch on the rear, 21-inch on the front, and the tyre sizes come up at a 90/90/21 for the front and a 150/70/17 for the rear. And they're these sort of semi-off-road tyres, which seem to do all right, but I wasn't going to be brave enough on a bike that costs this much that's not mine to find out how grippy they are. We've got adjustable shower forks on the front, and you've got Öhlins rear shocks, twin shocks on the back. The front, it's got a pair of 320mm brake discs with Brembo calipers, and on the rear, again, we have a 255, if I remember rightly, millimeter disc with a Brembo brake on the rear. Okay, so starting at the front, the Messler tyres, really good. I'm really liking them. They've got tons of grip. Doesn't feel like it has such a narrow front wheel. Obviously, there's our brake discs with our Brembo brakes, and you'll also notice this has got tubeless rims, so you don't have to have tubes, but you can also have spokes. If you want to know why that can't normally happen without doing this special system of having the spokes out the side of the rim like that, I have a video on that in my playlist, Tips for New Riders, or is it Mechanical Explanations? It may be both, but yeah, point is, I'll explain why that is a good thing for an on-road, off-road bike. Although as an off-road bike, well, I guess you can still just chuck tubes in it if you're doing that. The front fender is like a brushed aluminium or a brushed steel. It's very nice and soft looking. It confuses my autofocus because there's nothing contrasting about it. There you go. I think it looks great, and so far it seems relatively functional. Although obviously it doesn't have a huge tail on the back, so you do get sprays of mud all the way up to the headstock on the front, I've noticed. So here's our very nice looking forks, and obviously the LED lights with the traditional Triumph logo in the front, as you see on all of their bikes now. Very simple design though, with a bracketry. I am very much a fan of it. So if we come up to the hand controls, we have got adjustable levers. These are nice levers. The standard Triumph switchgear, this is all illuminated at night, which I think is a thing that all bikes should do. It's so good to be able to see all your controls, but obviously with this many controls on it, you're really going to need to be able to see what you're doing at night. So there's your adjusters for the front forks. And here is the steering lock, and as I've mentioned on this bike before, it is a keyless system, but the steering lock is done manually. So whereas on a bike normally, you put the key in, unlock the steering lock, turn on ignition, leave it in the bike, and then when you get off, you take it off, and I described it as this is getting on and off the bike. With this, you have to get the key out of your pocket, make sure that it's switched on, because you can switch it off, which is a fantastic feature for security. Then you have to unlock it. Then obviously you're not going to want to leave it in there really, so you put it back in your pocket. And then when you want to go again, you have to put it back in the bike to then lock it up, to then take it back out the bike and put it back in your pocket. This keyless system with this here, and if you want to use it every single time you use the bike, which you're probably going to want to because the insurance requires you to do it if you mention you have it, or well, the bike has it fitted. If you have to do it every single time, you double your use of the key compared to a key, which really defeats the point of a keyless system. On the Tigers and stuff like that, it's got a button to electronically put that on. I can totally understand why this hasn't got it, because there just isn't the space around the headstock to have an automatic system where it needs to lock. So I would have just done away with the keyless system entirely and just had a key. This is an old school sort of bike. They're trying to make it look that way with, like this strap band across the middle of the tank. And also like this petrol cap, which actually just hides a modern plastic one. I believe they do the Scrambler in 3 colours. Black, this one, which is cobalt blue, and jet black, and another one. This tank colour, to me, this is the best looking one. That blue, black and gold with the brushed aluminium is lovely. And then they've continued that accenting through the handguards. These are actually reasonably strong. It's all metal. This is one of the things about, you have window flexes and you have handguards. These have actually got metal arms, and that looks metal as well. I don't know how much force it will actually take, but at least there is a decent amount of rigidity there, whereas in a lot of these on bikes are just wind deflectors that if you drop the bike, they're just going to shatter. That might actually save your levers, though this might cost more than a lever. So you've got lots of adjustment on the front brake lever, and it is obviously a Brembo master cylinder. Turn the bike on here with this, and because I've got the key in my pocket, it's going to do it right. I just had to switch the key back on and off. So if we turn that on again, here you go, this is how it starts up. And one of the nice things on this bike is it's got analog digital clocks that I've not really seen before. Hold on, let me just put it into neutral. You can see that's where the neutral light is. Oh, you have to hold the clutch in on this, hold on. I quite like that feature about it. It's kind of a mix of new and old. Okay, so let's just have a little quick look on here. As you see, you've got the fuel on the left-hand side, speed in the middle, and you've got different things on the right-hand side, such as time and things. And if you look, you can change around what you change the brightness and the contrast, change the way that it's laid out, like that. I actually prefer it the other way. If you look on the right hand side there, you can also change displaying, see when the next service interval's due, what the temperature's like. Okay, there's only 2 things there. I thought there was more than that. There you go. It's basically you can kind of change the way it looks, change the layout a little bit, and just change what information you have on here. But it's enough. It's not too much. It's enough. It's glanceable. I like it. Okay, so by pressing the mode button, we bring up the mode options on this side here. As you can see, it tells you what each parameter is with that. So you see we've got Sport, Off-Road, Off-Road Pro, where traction control and ABS is off, and it's got the map of Off-Road. Rider, which I think you can customise. Rain, obviously for rain. Road and Sport. In Sport, it makes it quite a lot more snappier than it is in road mode, and actually I prefer it in the road mode with just a softer power delivery. It's not slow, it's not weak, it just doesn't have the same snap, and that makes it a little bit more controllable and a little bit more predictable and more comfortable in corners. And of course, it's got a fly-by-wire throttle. The mirrors, as you can see, they're quite small and round and And they're not amazing, okay? But that's kind of a byproduct of what they look like. I find that mirrors on motorcycles, the better they look, the worse they work. And if you want something to work really well, you need a big square cart mirror up here. I think they know most people are taking these off of this bike, probably because they want to go back to more of a classic look. Okay, so let's get to the exhaust. Obviously this is a parallel twin, so you've got one port over that side and one exhaust port here. They come together and they go right underneath your right leg with just this cover over it and go out the back like a couple of blunderbusses. Obviously it's a very classic look of the Scrambler, a quintessential part of its looks, I would say. Now obviously this exhaust does get very warm, but it isn't like burning warm. But I have seen some owners sort of, moaning and saying, how can I reduce the temperature from the exhaust on my leg? I didn't think it was that bad, but then I kind of like it's part of the bike. You get a slightly warm right leg because that's the sort of machine you're riding. I really like the design they've put into this. You see, every little gap has got a nice little thing to smooth it out and cover anything that looks a bit too modern. So you've got these little aluminium plates. Of course, the chain is on the right-hand side, which is backwards to normal. And we've got like a brushed aluminium cover over the front sprocket and the classic Triumph sort of heart-shaped engine. More little bits of bracketry under here and a belly pan. Appears to be made out of alloy. Not the most beefiest thing in the world, but it does cover both sides of the frame. I'm sure it will do its job good enough. If you're going to do some extreme stuff where you're actually going to pivot the bike on this, well then you might buy something a bit more beefy. Talking of off-road, the rear brake has got a very nice pedal to it, big bear cage style with spiky bits in it. Why is it spiky underneath? Can you flip it upside down? Or is that just part of the process of making it? Don't get why it's spiky underneath. Then the foot pegs aren't quite sharp in the moulding, but they do have rubber inserts for vibration reduction. But it would appear that, yeah, you can get those out, so you can go just straight down to those. Although if you're doing proper off-roading, you might want something slightly more aggressive than those points. Not sure. The rear pillion pegs are everything they need to be, and nothing more. Although I will note, are they actually bolted on? Oh, they are bolted into the frame opposed to part of the frame. That's good. So if these were to get bent or broken, you should be able to replace them. But that being connected that centrally to the frame's an interesting choice. Apparently it's 250mm of rear tyre travel. That's working on these Öhlins shocks with their adjusters on the top here. And as I mentioned, this is the twin setup, so you have one on each side. Looking from the other side, you see the brakes, and again that shock on the other side. Coming across to more bits of the engine covers, nice little bits of fairing, and just final details. Side stand is very springy. Once it's forward, it definitely wants to stay there. But it is very thin and only has a small foot on it. I don't know what the tail tidy options are. If you want to shorten that down, make it not stick out quite as far, because that's the European regulations, unfortunately. The rear plate has to be a certain height above and beyond the rear tyre. But MOT doesn't require it, so you can chop that or get something shorter and get it up here somewhere. Although you can obviously need a reasonable angle on it with the amount of rear tyre travel this gets. Oh, again, of course, we should mention here that the rear fender is again the same sort of brushed aluminium. I realise there's one thing I didn't do. I didn't look under the seat, so let's quickly do that. I can't imagine there's going to be much. No, there's not. What's in here? Oh, I think this is this for your phone? Yeah, you got a little padded box with a USB charger, so you can charge your phone on the go. Go back in there, please. For the love of God, go back in there. There we go. Nothing else to mention under there. No form of a toolkit whatsoever, but I guess they work on the assumption you're going to take something that's actually useful rather than the rubbish little kits they chuck on bikes. From the perspective of a closer look, fit and finish, and seeing what's on the bike, I think that pretty much covers it quite nicely. It is a quality looking bike. Sure, the parts in it, like these brushed aluminium parts and stuff, they look like old school brushed aluminium. They're not the same quality because that quality is handmade up here and it's different. I mean, I'm talking about a long time ago. But they have given it the look, but with the manufacturing abilities of today. It's pretty nice. I like the fact that the brushed aluminium, for instance, isn't too perfectly brushed. It almost looks like it's been hand brushed. And it might have been. because I can see some slight differences in the angle where you'd pull it down the wheel. So, you know, little finishing things like that can make something look unique. And obviously 13 grand is quite a bit of money for a bike, but it's nice to see that every part of the bike looks like effort's been put into it, a bit of design flair has been put into it, a bit of forethought and forward thinking has been put into it. So I think it shows its money in its fit and finish. I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, please hit that like button. I would very much appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel so you can see, you know, my first ride and all the bits and pieces that I've done on this bike, and then obviously the culmination of the review at the end. I have made some realisations about this bike. I've made some realisations about me and what bikes I might want in the future and things like that. It's been a real eye-opener, this one, more than I was expecting. So as I say, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, please consider doing that through Patreon. Links in the description. There are many benefits to that being part of some of the videos. Getting to see videos very much earlier than everyone else. I know I say a 3-day minimum. Patrons, what is it, like a week, 10 days? It depends how things go. But yeah. A huge thanks to those people, because without them I wouldn't even be able to do this. And of course a huge thanks to Triumph UK for working with me and lending me this bike to give you my honest and open thoughts on it without any controls or anything. Yeah, it's good. Bye bye.